All right, let's continue the conversation whether Kenyans are getting intolerant or just aggrieved. My guest is still with me, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, former governor of Makueni, Dr. Danvas Makori, Commissioner NCIC, and Reverend Canon Evans Omolo, Provost at the All Saints Cathedral. And before we took that break for the Sporting Action Commissioner, Professor Kivutha was just talking to us about whether we can turn this trajectory, because it's now an us versus them, and yet it is the people who elect them. What should they do now to change this trajectory? And who should change first? Is it the people or the leaders?
That's why you have a leader, you lead.
Yeah.
Start from the top. There's a short story that is given of when there's a flood in some forest, and the hare had an idea to get airlifted, so he took a stick and had two birds flying. So as they are flying, animals on the ground are like, wow, that is amazing, that's a brilliant idea. I wonder who came up with this idea. Well, the hare was holding onto the stick with the teeth, and opened up his mouth to say, well, I did. Well, you know what happened, that if you open your mouth holding your stick, it was going to happen. And the first thing is to, there's a saying that says, and we say that actions speak louder than words. So first of all, I think when Prof was in Makueni, he was known for his work, not for much for his rhetoric. You understand, as much as a teacher, as a professor, he's known for his work. He delivered for his people, and he will forever be remembered for that. You understand that? So I think, first of all, we need, and on both sides, I think there has to be a U-turn. The provost will use the word repent in the pulpit. I'll use U-turn. And basically, you change of mind and change of direction. You change your mindset. Because unless there's a change of mindset, there's such a disconnect between leadership and the people. It reminds me of Marie Antoinette. Let them eat bread. There's such a disconnect. Generally, there are few leaders who can speak the truth like he did. And he said, tuseme ukweli, I'm going to quote him, wananchi hawatupendi, end of quote. It's an honest, it's just honest after you look at what's happening, and it's across the board. It's not, doesn't matter what party you belong to, doesn't matter what formation you come to, as long as you're the political elite, Kenyans just tired. You understand? So they have to turn around and go back to where they started. It's not even far. They just can go back to 2022, where it was issue-based politics, where it wasn't personal politics, it wasn't personality-based politics. It was this, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Now, some of the issues have not materialized, but this was issue-based. We just have to go not very far from there to fix the issue.
Yeah.
Secondly, on those who feel like they're in, because right now there's almost 2 formations, maybe a third will come out. For those who are not in government, I think it's easy to criticize, but then what are you doing? What are you going to do for us? Because my friends who are in business are struggling, and they're hiring people. They're going to lay off people. Generally people are struggling, Trevor. People are in a good spot in this country. From those who employers to the employees, it's just not good. So what are you doing? You still have numbers in the parliament. The provost have talked about the failure of parliament. I mean, they can still do something to fix our issues as a country before we get there. You cannot say when we get to 2027. Well, a lot of people will not get there, Trevor. You understand? So what are you doing now? Because the rent is not going to wait till 2027, Trevor. School fees are not going to wait till 2027. Yeah, it needs to be paid today. Rent is going to be paid in the month. Food ain't going to wait until 2027. You got to pay. You got to eat today or tomorrow morning. So today, what are we going to do for our country? Yeah. So there has to be around. So for me, on one side, the less rhetoric and getting out of the rallies to more work, it will be better for our country. Let's just go to work. To me, that would be a good thing. Okay. And lastly, on Provost's point, and I admit, and I'm not going to defend the defenseless, institutions need to rise up. I mean, we actually have to step up to our plate. And I take that, what he said. I'm not going to defend it. It's the truth. So we literally have to step up now and take charge and say, we will not let the country go back to where it came from in 2007. We have to be firm. We have to be bold. We have to take the bull by its horn and say, you know what? No. We wouldn't sit back and be passive while we know the country is going in the right direction. And so we get a turnaround and go the right direction. Yeah.
So, Provost, is there a way of healing this nation? Because Prof suggested the dialogue and reconciliation. But if the people are so aggrieved, who will even lead that?
Yeah. Trevor, that has been a conversation for a long time. And in particular, it blossomed around the 2022 elections when a section of Kenyans felt shortchanged, and there's a lot of pain that you could see and feel. And so the issue of what do we need to do to bring healing to this country? As a clergy, I would very, very boldly propose and recommend to Kenyans that we consider a national dialogue convention. A national dialogue convention not driven by politicians, and I disqualify them on the basis that they have vested interests and selfish agenda around what our country would look like, but a national dialogue that is driven by the combined faith institutions, faith bodies around this country, and bringing on board critical representations within the society, and politicians become members of that conversation. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18 says, "Come, let us reason together." As a country, we must recognize that we cannot talk at each other, we cannot abuse each other, we cannot characterize each other negatively. We must come together, sit down, and talk. And what are we talking about? I know you want to ask that. Trevor, for me, what is going on in this country, and my fellow Kenyans, I believe majority of it revolves around a lot of issues that we have kept in our hearts historically that we've never addressed. So some of them include issues of land. Those have been contained in various documents, including TJRC, issues of assassinations that have been built over time. We've never addressed them. We've never reconciled and brought healing around them. Issues around unfair treatment and unfair distribution of resources and jobs. You realize that jobs will concentrate around either just a few communities as long as you lead. And there's a report that was done, I think, by NCIC that said that the top leader will have close to 70% of those working in that company coming from their particular community. And when Kenyans see that, they lose hope. They say, what the hell? Why would I apply for a job at TSC? Yet, if the leader of TSC, if the leader of this organization comes from this particular community, I will definitely not be favored. So we need to talk about equal opportunities for all Kenyans and recognize that the platform is ours, the national cake is for all of us. We must distribute this equally. And for me, that's one of the major proposals that I'd want to make. Yeah. But then secondly, as I let my other colleagues say something, but I think those whom we've elected in national leadership across the board must listen to the people. And I want to ask His Excellency the President. He inherited a deeply struggling economy that is overburdened by debts and all that. But I want to ask the President to listen to the people of Kenya. The people are complaining. National Intelligence Service gauges the mood of the people, and they do analysis, and they can project approval ratings. When they sit in the boardroom as National Security Council, they know that the ratings are terribly low because the people don't feel listened to. So as the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops said last time, a statement that stirred a lot of controversy, that let the government not become an advertising agency. Listen to the people want things done. Let's do things, and what Makoria said, let's deliver on those promises. What Professor said, we said we're going to do this, let's deliver. Let's release resources to impact people at the grassroots, then that will begin to build the confidence of the people. We have an opportunity, and this current executive has an opportunity in the remaining 2 years to turn around the hearts of the people when they begin to see things happen. I'm happy, on a positive note, that after a lot of complaints about SHA, I recently met a group of people who said, by the way, if it was not for SHA, then our kin wouldn't have survived. SHA came through for us. I want to hear such narratives that things are improving, we are turning the economy around, we are turning the healthcare around, we are turning the education system around. That then begins to build confidence in the people. But the bottom line, listen to the people and take their feedback and act expeditious.
Speaking of listening to the people, Prof, I'd like to hear your interpretation of this. Former President Uhuru Kenyatta said something to the young people and it brought a lot of backlash. In fact, most people said that that was incitement rather than inspiration. Let's listen to what he had to say.
You, our young people, will have to play your part in reshaping the destinies of our countries of birth, and you will help us realize that this is the moment for each and every one of you to step onto the stage. Your time has come.
Prof, was that inciting?
I think that's God's truth. It's the time for young people, not just here, but the whole of, the continent, to come onto the stage and to be, the leaders who must do the correct things. Because when you look at, for example, Europe, you get prime ministers, presidents below 40. And even at independence in our country, Matibas, Kibakis, Tomboyas, all those people, were the age of these, young people. So I don't think that is incitement. Of course, one, can ask, was that an idea the president had when he was president? But I think it's spot on. It is spot on. And this brings me to the point that the leaders must accept there's a problem, because most of them don't seem to think that there's a problem. Sometimes you are in leadership and problems pile, and you actually don't, like the Marie Antoinette, you don't realize that there is a problem. So that's the first thing. They really must accept that there is a problem. And therefore be able to even say we are sorry. This has persisted for a long time. Maybe now we will, address it together. Because I was surprised by a colleague who said that what is happening today makes President Moi a saint. I got shocked because during my days, we really were saying Moi was doing terrible things, to us. So I think that's important. And even now for the faith sector to intervene in terms of the dialogue that has been proposed, the faith sector also has to particularly talk to the young people, because they did say that, the faith sector was involved. Some parts of the faith sector were involved in terms of getting us into the current problem. So these young people are not forgetting, And
they don't seem to trust any institution. So it becomes, a dialogue will be very difficult.
You see, it will be, but it will not be impossible. Because you surmount some of those kind of teething problems, so to speak. And then, in terms of the issues that were categorized, including negative ethnicity, including youth disempowerment, huge stuff, and really, saying this corruption stuff, how do you make sure that there is money available? These debts, when we get them, when we get the money, the loans, what do they do? So there's a lot, to discuss, and actually a good opportunity was when last year, when the president dissolved the entire cabinet. I think if he had said, okay, you have said that these people are not doing what they should do, can you now suggest who can do the job? Give me a cabinet. And even you young people, you can be in the cabinet, you should be in the cabinet. Maybe they would have said, okay, now we agree. But I'm thinking that if we are not careful, we'll reach a point, if we haven't reached the point, where people will say, if this government wins elections, we can't accept, it can't be a win. And you see, if people get to that point, then it means that you are staring at a civil strife, dangerous civil strife. So I think that's something that at the back of the mind of the intelligence and the leadership, they have to do what is necessary so that this distrust, these people being very aggrieved and all that is dealt with. Because otherwise, we are looking at something probably worse than 2007, 8. And I think that the president has to reach a point, should reach a point. One is asking for him to reach a point where he says, the people are not happy.
Yeah.
And I need to, particularly the young people, and I need to meet them and say, what is it that we should do? Tell me, and I will do it.
To change course.
To change course.
Okay.
You know, tell me, and I will do it. Okay. But otherwise, if he's told by those who are surrounding him that we will go places, and you know, some of them are very loud, I don't see that working.
Okay. And Makori, there's something interesting that Prof has brought out, that yes, what President Kenyatta was saying, according to Prof, is not incitement, but was that his position during his time? And this is the main concern by the younger generation, that they say that people only speak about things once they're out, and yet we know what their track record was. Actually, the hypocrisy.
Actually, Trevor, let me answer this by a sobering reality to Kenyans. After 2007, after we came back together, we had 4 agendas. Remember the agenda, 4 agendas? Agenda 4, actually that's why NTC was formed, was to look at structural issues. One of them, I think Prof was there, was high unemployment, youth unemployment, section of our country feeling not part of our country. The former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, took over a part of our country that was, or policies which were really geared towards addressing those structural issues, okay? And Kibaki understood the problem and he was trying to fix it. Now, he was there in power for 10 years. For the 10 years, no, this is fact, I'm not criticizing, this is just fact, I like data. If you look at the data, every year to year, unemployment to the youth kept on increasing.
During his time.
During his time, that was never addressed. Now, he appointed few young people like us to do government, and we're grateful for that. But generally speaking, youth unemployment became higher and higher. The Gini index showed disparity between the rich and the poor increased over his time. The economic fortunes for Kenyans who felt Kibaki's time, they prospered. Most of them dwindled. Businesses closed at a time which are high young people. The very programs that Kibaki started addressing long-term issues comes to education. We started to see rollback. CBC came up during his time, and now we see a rollback of all the gains that were done to address those issues. So how do you say, well, it's time for youth to arise when you had in power, you never gave opportunity for the masses of the youth to arise. At that time, we were 65% of the population of the country. Number 2, this generation, Gen Zs and Alphas, do not need anybody to tell them to rise up. They will take it. I can tell you. I interact with them a lot of times. And they don't need anybody to tell them, well, it's time for you to rise up. Maybe other people used to be told that. But I tell you, come 2027, whatever will happen will be an X factor. Nobody can even predict, because they will just step up and they say enough is enough, and they're action oriented. We don't want to hear words. It's not what you say, it's what you do that counts. That's why I said earlier, it's not going on top of cars and saying things ain't gonna cut for these people. It's what you do. And now, Trevor, for them, they will do it. They will not, they don't want to be told, they would be invited to come to the table and there's dialogue. No, they'll just show up and take the table, create their own table and run it. That's just their mindset. That's how they're wired.
Reverend, how do you pacify a young generation that is accusing your institutions of being part of the problem? So how do you call them to the table when you're also lumped up with the rest of the people they are against?
That's true. And when Prof raised that, I actually concede and agree that the religious sector has equally been complicit in this entire process. A section of it, let me qualify, a section of the religious sector has been complicit in really lowering the standards and not rising up to play their prophetic role, as we call it. And I just qualify this, then I answer your question. You see then the religious space, some of them really falling into the traps of the tribal balkanization, that you will find a lot of religious leaders from a particular area where particular political leaders come from will largely speak in defense of the stand of those particular political leaders. Whether you go to the coast, whether you go to central Kenya, whether you go to Nyanza, whether you go to western, and therefore that then neutralizes the prophetic voice of the religious leaders. And that's why you say, rightly, that Gen Zs would struggle to trust. But having said that, I believe, as we say in scripture, that there is always a remnant. There is always a section of both the church and other religious brothers and sisters who still mean well and who still stand for what is right. I can give an example. The All Saints Cathedral, where I graciously serve and lead, has demonstrated that as part of the Anglican Church and as part of the National Council of Churches of Kenya. And definitely, if you go to the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, you will definitely, again, not miss to find we have voices that have been credible, that have been consistent. And so when it comes, when you talk of who then can call people around, who then can speak to the Gen Zs, who then can engage, who then can they trust? There is a plethora of examples available within the religious space and sections that have stood on the moral high ground. Okay. Having said that, Trevor, I believe that healing, therefore, is necessary. Yeah. And, because I think that's what you had asked earlier as well, that we need to work towards healing. One of the things I want to suggest for my fellow clergy and religious leaders is that we must work on programs that seek to bring healing to families, bring healing to communities, and then that should be able then to be consolidated to cascade to the national level. By the way, World Health Organization says that in Kenya, there are 4 suicides every day, every single day. That gives you well over 1,400 suicide deaths every year. And it's because of the many, many frustrations. So those bring about breakages and hurt. And so we need to work on healing programs that we can heal. So let's restrain from following the tribal political leaders and look at our role as national leaders. Okay. And therefore, when I serve at All Saints, I am not serving my community, and I'm not speaking for my community, but I speak for Kenyans. Okay. If we could have that in all sections of the country, then we create a pyramid where we have people that we can trust at the top who can lead even the conversation we're talking about.
All right. There's a lot of feedback coming through. Let me read some of them, and then I'll come to each and every one of you for just 1 minute closing remarks, your message to the people and your message to the leaders as well. Let's move that to this other screen on the side. Then you see what you're saying. You call yourself Tweetedie. You say Kenyan leaders seems to be in competition with the citizenry. MPs forget that they normally request people to serve them through elections. Instead, Kenyan Parliament has become an avenue for self-actualization. When professionals start earning better than MPs, then Kenya will heal. Okay? Rael George says, Kenyans are very tolerant, but they have been pushed too far and their tolerance has died. Now they have decided to express themselves in a manner never seen before. Okay? Gabi says it's a complex issue. Many Kenyans aren't just intolerant. They're deeply frustrated by systematic failures, economic hardships, and unaddressed injustices. When people feel unheard for too long, their grievances can manifest as anger or impatience. Hussein says Kenyans are not necessarily intolerant. They're deeply aggrieved by poor governance, inequality, and unfulfilled promises. What looks like intolerance is often frustration boiling over after years of being ignored. Olichina says, yes, Kenyans have felt left out of matters of governance. Leaders, especially the parliament, have gotten away with so much hope, barring their chief mandatory to satisfy the executive. Okay, interesting. Mark says, does it mean when Kenyans become intolerant or aggrieved, the security details of the president should be complacent? President security lapsed at Migori and it shouldn't happen again. All right, Jano says financial inequality in Kenya is the root cause of the anger. The haves and have-nots, the poor hate the rich. There's enough for us all, but no will for equity. We need to connect to our communities, love our localities. Okay. Sonte says, while it's evident that the economy is struggling and ordinary citizens are feeling the pressure, the political class continues to insist that everything is fine. This only deepens public frustration. Who is supposed to give the feedback? The leaders must reset and remember the true leadership is rooted in service. The people will appreciate it, and if they feel that someone is genuinely listening and caring about their real struggles, no empty rhetoric. Okay, Mugomi Jim says, such a great topic tonight. My take is that our leaders have become extremely boastful and keep spitting at the electorate. People are tired and the signs are not good. The leaders must become servants. And Diki says, please let us respect the dignity of every office, regardless of personal feelings towards the individual holding it. Demeaning acts are unacceptable and must be condemned. Kenyans, we can do better than this. Kula says Kenyans are suffering from a serious aggravated anger, particularly workers. Too many taxes that has rendered workers to deplorable living conditions, and they are unable to support their kins. Companies has cut off jobs. We are in a hole. Yatian says Kenyans have become intolerant and are bluntly misusing the freedom of expression. This is aided by the advancement of tech and specifically AI, which is largely going unchecked. I mean, how is putting our elected leaders in coffins justified? Okay. Dennis says the biggest issue in the society is the moral decadence. The nation has turned secular. That breeds intolerance because people will no longer have respect. For example, at an accident scene, Kenyans are more likely to take out their phones and record than help those affected. We need to fear the Lord more. Stanley says failed institutions that lead to the moral decadence as we are witnessing in our youths include family. Parents have stepped away from their parental responsibilities. Sir Nixon says we are really tired of promises, corruption, looting and misappropriation of public funds. We want services commensurate to the taxes we are giving or available money and to all regions without discrimination. We are all in the government. Prof, your closing remarks to the leaders and to the people.
Yes, I think, let me say the dialogue that Provost has talked about.
Yeah.
It is something that even the clergy, the faith sector can start. Maybe it's not something that you wait for the political leaders to start. So that if within their organizations, they were able to, to decide to start that and maybe even talk to some of the young leaders, those Gen Z people, so that there is some synergy. I think that because the way things are going, we can reach a point when it's impossible to have a dialogue. So the earlier, the better. That is started, the better.
So there is a point of no return in your view?
There is a point of, definitely there is a point of no return when the people will just say that, we want, as they say, drain the swamp. And they are almost saying that, already. So I think that was a great point, and for the religious sector, the faith sector, in its totality, to be able to think through that and then see who else is trusted, particularly by the young people, so that that debate can go on. And just to ask the president, to ask the leadership to accept that things are not right, and therefore there is humility, because the president campaigned on the basis of, faith, so that becomes prominent again, if possible.
Okay. Makori, closing remarks, the leaders and the people?
To the leaders, Kenya is like this fabric, right? It's a tapestry of all cultures, all people, diversity in its strength. But all leaders are doing are pulling apart. One is holding the other side, one pulling the other side. It reminds me of the two women in Solomon's story, trying to fight for the child. And when you pull this cloth on one side, you will tear it. And that's what they're tearing the fabric of our country, the soul of our country. So I urge them to put it together, not to tear. Their responsibility, leadership actually is to serve, is to uphold the Constitution, is to lead by example, to remember that this tapestry we have as a country needs to be held together, not torn together. The people, the anger is understandable, absolutely, and justifiable too, to an extent. What Prof has said is very true. When we get to a place of no return, it's we the people who will suffer, not the elite leaders. They will fly out and jet out with diplomatic passports and visas. And the millions will suffer. It's the people who will suffer. So I would say one is done that hate and we are told not to go to bed with anger. Yeah, to just forgive. Yes, there's failure. But there has to be an internal disposition as people to let it go. Because that anger, when it boils and boils and boils, one day it will explode. So we have a responsibility to forgive, okay, because that's part of healing. And then as I forgive, I purpose next time to do better, to learn from my mistakes and do better so we can remedy the path that our country is facing. Okay. So both the people and the leaders, we have all responsibility to do and to take.
All right, Rev?
Yeah, two things, Trevor, and fellow Kenyans and our friends who live here. One is to our national leaders. Scripture tells us in Mark chapter 10, verse 45, talking about Jesus, for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. I want to request our very esteemed national leaders, as my Senator Edwin Sifuna did say earlier, we must rise above and demonstrate solid leadership that is geared towards serving the people. We are in those positions of leadership to serve the people, not for self-aggrandization, not for self-edification. And I want to really ask the President at a very personal level here on this talk show that you lead a cabinet, and each of those cabinet secretaries has got a mandate. Please follow through a scorecard and let every ministry deliver to the people of Kenya what is promised therein, so that we begin to see results. Mr. President, you have various institutions. Hold the managing directors and the chief executives accountable to ensure that each institution delivers. Whether you talk of the judiciary, whether you talk of EACC, whether you talk of NCIC, let every institution deliver. And if they don't deliver, it's very clear what needs to happen to them. To the people of Kenya, I feel that we need to be a little more tolerant. And Trevor, for record, I want to say it is regrettable what happened to the president in Migori. And my fellow Kenyans, we need to be a little tolerant. I understand the anger, which I've spoken about here, but I want to ask the citizenry, can we organize ourselves across the country, whether it's at constituency level or at ward level, county assembly level, to create citizen barazas, citizen assemblies that we can use as platforms to hold leaders accountable. Hold your MCA accountable on resources that are sent to the county assembly. Hold your member of parliament accountable on what they should do and how they should represent you. Hold the governor accountable. Because the Constitution tells us in Article 1 that the power belongs to the people. Nobody will give you that power. Let's organize ourselves and demand better services from our leaders.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. Professor Kivutha Kibwana, former Governor Makwini, Dr. Danvas Makori, Commissioner NCIC, and Reverend Canon Evans Omolo, Provost All Saints Cathedral. And for all of you for sending in all the feedback, those massive feedback on this conversation, I promise you will do it again sooner rather than later. For in behalf of everyone who made this possible, say good night and God bless.